afternoon. So I noticed before the last session ended, there was a conversation about how there was going to be gift cards given away to Bloomingdale's or whatnot if you kind of came back. And I thought that was very well timed because much of what we're going to talk about today are promotions as a whole. So hopefully we'll have some winners here. One of the great things about promotions are measurable results. So as you get into your seats, we see the great results of them as a whole. Anyways, it's really a privilege to be here with you today. I've known about this organization for some time and really admire the work of it, and it's great to see the growth of it into digital expansion as a whole. And at 2nd Street, we have the privilege of working with over 3,000 media companies, mostly in North America, a little bit in Europe, very little in Latin America as a whole. So what I really wanted to do, and was privileged to be asked to come and speak today, is to just share some of the perspective that we see from working with customers across the local media spectrum as a whole. So I wanted to start by looking at a couple of trends that through our 3,000 partners, we've kind of had a front row seat in. And there's things that are not always in the headlines of the trade publications, but I think they're really profound. So this first chart is a chart from Burrell and Associates, and it looks back a long ways. It looks back about 15 years. And what you're seeing here is the growth of advertising versus the growth of promotion spend. So how are marketers spending their money as a whole? And what you'll see here is there's really been a fairly profound shift over the last 15 years. If you look at the red line here, it's actually advertising spend adjusted for inflation. And it's a huge market in terms of how marketers spend their money, billions and billions and billions of dollars. But what we've really seen over the last 15 years is this shift of where new money is being spent, and it's into promotions. It's into putting things on sale in a store to get somebody to come in and buy it, and they pay the marketing expense by the discount as a whole. It's in using contests like the one we had to get you in your seats today, to build email databases, to get somebody into a store, to get measurable results. So it's coupons, it's deals, it's discounts, it's contests. It's anything that drives an actual behavior from an advertiser. And so you've seen this really interesting shift in marketing spend, and part of what's fueling that is digital. Because digital is the ultimate promotions medium, right? There's nothing I like better, and it's typically on a Sunday, that I get a chance to lean back with the newspaper and enjoy reading my Sunday newspaper. Much harder during the week. I'm on the go, it's more mobile, etc. People who watch television, it's not only a lean back medium, for many it's a lying down medium as a whole, right? Radio is something that people take in, hopefully passively, oftentimes while they're driving. But when we talk about digital, whether it be on desktop or on phones, it's something we can lean into and interact with. So it allows us to enter a contest. It allows us to vote in a contest. It allows us to download a coupon, to purchase a deal, to give and to get something back as a whole. And it's really ideally suited for the notion of promotions. And so we've seen an explosion of spending by marketers in the promotion space over the last, in particular, the last 5, 6, 7 years. And this is once again from Burrell and Associates, expected to continue to grow as digital dollars move to digital as a whole. So at 2nd Street, we focus on a lot of different things. So we have we provide technology to the media industry, but we also have different insight. We have our own conference along these lines across the media industry, where we get a lot of sharing of experiences across media in North America. We have our own website that's dedicated, really a trade publication, to this space of this intersection of promotions and interactive content, and what we'd really call audience engagement as a whole. And if you check it out, there's a website, and my slides will ultimately be there, along with some supporting materials for what we'll talk about today. So we've set up a site, secondstreetlab.com, SIP-Connect. So when we talk about different kinds of engagement that we're seeing, that people are trying to take advantage of this shift in revenue, I wanted to start by just going through a few of the different elements of it as a whole. So in a lot of cases, it's just simple contests or sweepstakes. So it's an opportunity to go win a grocery spree, $1,000 worth of groceries as a whole, in order to, for the grocery store and the media company to collect your email address and some other valuable information. Sometimes it's a photo contest. It could be something like, send us a photo of your ugliest yard. We're going to do a makeover contest. Or a photo of your cutest kid, or your cutest pet, or a sports contest as well. It also can be deals. The luster is off of Groupon a little bit, but we continue to see media companies making, in some cases, millions of dollars from their deals programs, because it makes a lot of sense for an advertiser who's looking to invest their dollars in a direct response medium where they pay for performance as a whole. It's really, though, expanded beyond just contests. A lot of people are now taking advantage of what we would call interactive content as a way to engage their audience and begin to get responses from them, to get direct engagement as a whole. So these are things like quizzes, the kinds of things we all see on Facebook. They're kind of silly sometimes. It could be a personality quiz, like this one is, who is your TV mom? It could be what kind of a driver are you, sponsored by a local auto dealer, and you fill in different things and it'll give you a response of what kind of driver you are. It could be something that's more knowledge-based and really less silly and really more important. This is an example of a TV station that during Breast Cancer Awareness Month had a quiz about how much do you know about breast cancer health, women's health as a whole. It can be editorial content. It can be something that complements a story or a different way of telling a story, which once again drives engagement with your audience. This is kind of one of my favorite ones. It's a recycling quiz. I'm very fortunate to have a great marriage of over 20 years, and it's a terrific and wonderful marriage, but recycling is a sore point in our marriage. I think there's rules to what can be recycled, and my wife thinks just about anything can go in the recycling bin, including wood. And so I sent her, like in the same night, I came across an article all about recycling that I sent her. It was a long article. And I sent her this quiz, which was from a partner of ours as a whole. And she blew off the article, and she took the quiz, and now we're all good. So it's a wonderful form of storytelling in many ways. You know, can this be recycled, yes or no? And different people learn and storytell in different ways. Here's an example of a quiz the Arizona Republic ran during the immigration debate that's happening in Arizona and Phoenix as a whole. And it was a quiz about, could you pass the immigration test? And about half of them can, people who took the quiz. So just kind of a different way of telling a story as a whole. Interactive content can also be native. So here's some examples of quizzes used as native content. So this is a realtor who was looking to surface people who were interested in buying and selling their homes. And it's, what color door should your house have? And something people frequently do before they sell their house is they repaint their door. So a fun quiz that was part of a native package for them. This is one on bike safety for a health insurance company. Another one on, should I replace or repair my heater before winter as a whole? A great way to educate people and develop leads. This is one on energy, how smart are you about energy efficiency in your home with an energy company as a whole. So quizzes are a very robust way that media companies are using to engage their audiences. We also see ballots, something very popular in the United States, which are really the best of. So the Miami Herald may run the best of Miami. What's the best sushi restaurant in Miami? What's the best eye doctor in Miami? What's the best sporting goods store in Miami? What's the best place to go get brunch before a Miami Dolphins game as a whole? And these are incredibly popular because you get submissions from your readers, and then you allow them to vote, and they're registering to do this as a whole. And these oftentimes generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue by upselling digital display advertising into the ballots themselves, by running print special sections of what are the best of your community, and actually even translating into events as a whole. So whether it be something for your entire community, or even going into a deep dive on weddings, or something like high school football or high school sports as a whole, ballots are a part of interactive content. And finally, it takes you to surveys, okay? So different forms that people can fill in as a whole. And so a simple survey is a way, once again, to collect information from your readers. So all of this, what all of this has in common is these are ways to incent your audience to actually not just engage with you, but to share something back to you as a whole. Whether it be to win something, whether it be to learn something, or whether it be to actually share their opinion in a ballot or a survey, your readers are anxious to share and give you insight into them as a whole. And we've heard a lot of talk at this conference about building and knowing our audiences and knowing personas as a whole. And promotions are not just a great way to generate revenue by selling sponsorships or solutions to advertisers. They're a great way to learn about your audience as a whole. So you can then target them directly with messages. So that's what's happening in the world of promotions and interactive content. I wanted to shift now to a little bit of what does this mean in terms of building our audience long term. So what we've seen from across all of these media companies in North America is promotions and interactive content are great ways to generate revenue. They're incredible ways to be able to engage your audience in very powerful ways. People love this and they're willing to share it virally on social, and engagement is incredible. And it's a great way to build your email database, that 5+ point that we heard earlier this morning as a whole. But ultimately, for all of us, an email database is only a bunch of emails too often. You know, how many of us know what's really in our email database? And let me just take a brief moment here and ask, how many of you have 80% of the email addresses in your local market of adults that are out there? Okay. How many of you have 50% of them? How many of you have 25% of them? How many of you don't know, right? All of us, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know for two reasons. One is we don't know how many email addresses we have because we haven't made owning that database important to ourselves. And secondly, we don't even know who those people are. You know, for example, I might be in one of your databases, and I'm probably not an addressable part of your audience living in St. Louis, Missouri. So we need to understand who our audience is, and particularly this audience that we own as a whole. Because ultimately, they're not email addresses, they're people. They're people. And what we find is, through all of the contests and promotions and interactive content that media companies run, they're actually behind the scenes learning a lot about their audience that they don't know. There's the tip of the iceberg, and then there's a lot more underneath it as a whole. So if you run a simple sweepstakes, not unlike what we are running this afternoon, to give away a gift card to Home Depot, to a hardware store, what we'll learn about somebody is not only will they share their name and their address and their email address and maybe their phone number because they want to be contacted if they win. So they're willing to explicitly share information, but we're able to now implicitly know something about them because they probably own a home if they want to enter this hardware competition, or they are looking to do a home improvement project. So we're able to tag them as somebody in our audience who's interested in home improvement. If we run one of these ballots, one of these Reader's Choice ballots as a whole, we learn even more because we know what categories people choose to vote in. So I am going to vote for the best sushi restaurant in St. Louis. I love sushi as a whole. I'm going to vote for the best kids sporting goods store. I have 3 boys under 16 years old. I'm not voting yet, although this may be changing soon, for the best lens shop or the best eye doctor in St. Louis because I don't wear eyeglasses. So people are literally filling out forms telling us about themselves, but today we don't capture that data as a whole. When people take a quiz, even silly quizzes can hold information that's interesting. So if somebody ran a quiz on what pet should I buy next, or what kind of dog should I buy for my family as a whole, one of the questions might be, what's the next car you're going to buy as a whole? Just a way to understand your personality. Do you want a small car? Do you want a large car, a big SUV? Do you want a sporty car as a whole? It kind of makes sense for a quiz, but it gives us valuable insight into that consumer. And finally, if you run a deals program, like Groupon or things like that in your market, we're able to actually capture transactional data by knowing what people want to buy. So what we found is through just audience engagement, just through promotions and interactive content and more, we actually know a lot about our audience. And we think this is really critical because it allows us to know who's ready to buy a car. It allows us to know who's looking to purchase jewelry. It allows us to look at who's looking to remodel their home. And finally, it also lets us know who's looking to go eat at a certain kind of restaurant as a whole. It gives us incredible insight, and the future of our industry is really predicated on us understanding our audience in these ways. So I first wanted to talk about how you can use data profiles, how you can use this to transform yourself as an audience engagement company. For starters, it transforms how we sell everything that we do, because we no longer just walk in the door with a number about our audience, but we're able to actually go in and talk to people about what makes up that audience. Who is actually in your database? What are their likes? What are their ages? Where do they live? How have they behaved in the past? It allows us with much greater authority to go in and speak to people. It builds that email database, and we know more about that email database as a whole. I think all these slides are cutting off here, but what this chart shows is a contest that was run. And we see thousands and thousands of these a month running in our system. And what it will show you is that the first couple days a contest runs, if it's not promoted, if it's just promoted in the paper, promoted on your website, it does well. But something happens on that 3rd day or 4th day of it. And what happens there is the day the email is sent, engagement just spikes through the roof because email is that valuable as a whole. There's a lot of people who've wanted to kind of write the obituary for email for many, many years. You know, it's being replaced by social, it's being replaced by texting, it's being replaced by messaging as a whole. But at the end of the day, what our data shows us is that overwhelmingly, and now more than ever, now that email is all in our phones, available on a 24-hour basis, is that people engage with email. So let me ask another question to the audience. We'll make sure you're awake after lunch. How many of you have checked your email today? Okay, a few hands not going up. How many of you checked your email within 5 minutes of waking up this morning, right? How many of you have checked your email while I've been up here talking, right? Okay, email is not going away. In fact, it's more effective than ever before. And we're seeing media companies, the New York Times, I was at a conference recently where they were talking about how email is really the cockroach of the internet. It just doesn't go away. And they're tripling and quadrupling down on their use of email newsletters and their use of email to engage people towards stories at different times of the day. Email is an incredibly valuable asset that we as an industry have had 20 years to own that database, and we haven't done it yet. So email allows us, and there's still time, you know, things like quizzes, things like contests, things like deals allow us to build that email database very quickly and effectively, and it really can drive everything that we're looking for. At the end of the day, the power of email is that we own it. We own it, as opposed to things like social. I was out at Facebook just a few weeks ago with an organization whose board I sit on called the Local Media Association. And we met with the team at Facebook to talk about some of the issues I know we've been talking about today, and we're going to talk about tomorrow in terms of this pressure between Facebook, which is such a powerful way for us to engage our audience and get people to our site, and the fact that we're now kind of at their mercy of a change in the algorithm can overnight kind of wipe out 30 or 40% of the traffic to our site. We've got to engage on Facebook, but we're in this predicament of feeling so stuck with them because we haven't taken the last 20 years to build our database. And so by owning our databases instead of renting them, it puts us in a powerful position to grow all of our businesses as a whole. Data drives direct marketing, whether that be, there's a huge shift going on right now where pretty much all marketing spending, all advertising is going to have data one way associated with it that targets it, whether it be display or email or anything along those lines. Advertisers expect their message to be targeted. It's not enough to go to a broad audience anymore. So the ability to go in and be able to go check on SUVs for an auto dealer and be able to go target people who are in the market for an SUV with deeper and more effective display advertising campaigns is part of what the advantage that we have when we own our database. Data drives circulation. So for the papers, your papers that have circulation programs and subscribers, it is an incredible way to acquire new customers. It's what our advertisers are doing, and we need to do a better job of using our own data to go out and acquire our own subscribers and retain smartly by personalizing the messaging to our advertisers to our subscribers we already have, the benefits of being a subscriber, so we retain our audience over time as well. And data drives display advertising. It's not just about email, but as more and more shifts to programmatic and as the display market shifts in that direction, data either saves you money from buying it from a third party or allows you to more authoritatively go out there and deliver results on behalf of your advertisers. So data and owning those personas that come from interactive content and promotions is critical for you, but it's also an opportunity for you to give your advertisers what they want. Your advertisers are looking at the same thing. They're looking to build their email databases. They're looking to learn more about their prospective customers so they can better target their marketing to them as a whole. So let me give you a couple of case studies on how contests and quizzes can do that as a whole. This is a small market media company in Kentucky, small place called Paducah, Kentucky. They went and called on a hearing aid store, a place for hearing aids, an audiologist. And what the hearing aid store, when they asked them what they wanted from the results of their investment in advertising to be, said a few different things. They said, and they're interested in identifying who in their market wears hearing aids or has a loved one who wears hearing aids. Makes sense, not for everybody, not something targeted for me or my family. They wanted to grow their email database because they wanted to be able to nurture a customer. A hearing aid costs $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, not something you just pick up at the drugstore. It's a considered purchase that needs to be nurtured. And what would be really powerful if they could get somebody to come to an event like this, somebody to come to a lunch and learn at our local restaurant or a hotel to learn about hearing loss. Because if they can get them in the room and educate them about what can be done about hearing loss, their ability to close went through the roof. So the solution was to run a contest, to give away a hearing aid as a way to get people who were interested in hearing aids for themselves or loved ones to identify themselves. But furthermore, to ask them a series of survey questions, because people will pretty much tell you anything. They'll even come to my speech here as a whole if they get a chance to win a Bloomingdale's gift card as a whole, if they get a chance to win something. And so you can not only learn somebody's contact information, but you can ask them, do you or a loved one need a hearing aid? Are you in the market in the next 12 months? Would you be willing to be added to our email list? Would you be willing to come to a lunch and learn? Would you be willing to have a sales representative call you today? And so they ran this promotion, and the numbers were modest, but incredibly effective. They had 359 people enter. So the media company was able to promote this on air. It was a TV station, as well as through their email database. They had 359 people enter, but 164 of them are looking to purchase a hearing aid in the next 12 months. Over 217 said, please put me on your email list. I'd love to get more information on a regular basis from the advertiser. This is something I'm interested in. 95 of them said, I'd like to come to your event. And 55 of them said, would you please have a sales representative call me today? So this is the kind of results, the data-driven measurable results that advertisers are looking for more than ever before, that we're able to deliver because we can put the promo in promotions as a whole. Let me give you another example from the same market. This is a furniture store that was looking to identify people who were in the market to buy furniture. So in this case, they ran a combination of a quiz and a sweepstakes. So if you took a quiz, you had an opportunity to win a gift certificate to shop at the furniture store. So it's kind of a fun quiz. It's what's your home decor personality? Is it traditional? Is it rustic? Is it modern? And to do that, you answered a bunch of questions about which bedroom set do you like best? Which living room set do you like best? Which dining room set do you like best? And they were all pictures of furniture sets from the advertiser. So they're getting their product in front of people and getting them to interact and respond to it. And based on those results, they were able to tell you, you are a traditional furniture person or you're a rustic furniture person as a whole. And because people wanted to win the gift card, they were willing to answer additional questions. Are you in the market for furniture in the next, if so, when are you looking to purchase and for which room? And on top of that, they now know for which room, if it's a living room set, which furniture set they like best that they can go back and market to. So once again, great results, great insight that they were able to get into what consumers thought about their furniture. And they had over 1,800 people participate. Over 74% of them said, have the advertiser begin sending me emails as a whole. So the kinds of results that an advertiser is looking for that are data-driven, that you can deliver not only for yourself, but for your advertisers. And this stuff works really well. So finally, let me give you one example of how you combine the concepts. If you know your audience, and you're able to run campaigns to deliver results for your advertiser, it gets really interesting. So this is a small city called Springfield, Missouri, the state that I live in today. They had a Mexican restaurant in Springfield, Missouri that was a client of theirs. Well-known place with about 8 different locations in that market. And they had their 20th anniversary, so they ran a kind of native, kind of agency kind of quiz on behalf of Mexican Villa, all about Mexican Villa for their favorite customers that are out there as a whole. And when they were done with it, they'd had great engagement. Over 1,700 people had participated. 70% opted in for the email database for Mexican Villa. Great for them to be able to nurture their loyal audience as a whole. And then they were able to go back to them and tell them not only about how did people answer different questions, but about who these people were because of all the other ways they'd engaged with the audience. Are they college students? Do they live nearby? Do they like to travel? What are their other likes and dislikes? So it was basically market research that they were able to provide this advertiser. And in fact, one of the things that they learned was one of the questions in the quiz is, where would you like for Mexican Villa to open up its next location? And the place that they wanted them to open it up next was actually a place they already had a restaurant. But it was named a little differently. They had purchased it, it wasn't branded quite correctly. So they've now invested in a new marketing campaign with the station to boost name identity of that particular station. So let me just close by offering some insight into a couple of ways that you could think about becoming more of an audience engagement company in this respect. And these came right out of our summit from a few weeks ago in St. Louis. We had about 200 people from 33 different states from the United States attend, including Hawaii, which was a lot of fun for us. And it was a great event with across newspaper, television, radio, magazine, cable, etc. But a couple of the things, and now they're going to get cut off here, so a couple of the things that came out of that were 7 ways to think about, is your company becoming a modern audience engagement company? And let me just go through them quickly. One of them is, when you think about audience engagement, I heard some conversation this morning about breaking down silos. Are you working in silos, or are you working as a team? Are you working in terms of advertising and marketing and editorial in terms of how you engage your audience strategically and build your database? Or is it free-for-all? Is everybody out on their own? And so we heard from many that was the struggle that they had. But many are beginning to shift in terms of having an organization within their company across departments that's focused on this overall. A lot of people were kind of thinking about this as a side thing, and now that's shifted to center stage for them as a whole. It's become a strategy across an entire company. And people are saying we've got to get our best people in a room to focus on audience engagement across the entire company. Owning this database is going to be the difference between the winners and the losers over the next decade in media as a whole. And those that are doing it aren't just seeing long-term success, they're seeing revenue opportunities explode in front of them. This is a gentleman from Daytona, Florida, Daytona Beach, Florida, where they've already in the first 4 months of the year generated $150,000 from promotions as a result of this cross-departmental effort. If you're going to get serious about this too, you've got to establish goals and create a plan. So this is Peter Newton from Gatehouse Media, one of the larger newspaper companies in the US. This was something they had a lot of success a couple years ago, and then they began to shift their priorities towards their agency and other things along those lines. They've refocused with a dedicated team now and a huge goal of really generating about $40 million 2 or 3 years from now. And it's begun to really explode for them now that they've put the focus back into it. This is Beth Mann, who talked about a small little radio station, a small little city in Kentucky once again. And she talked about it, if you set a goal, it has to be big enough to matter to your CEO and to the people in this room so that it requires focus as a whole. And if you develop a plan, you can have tremendous success. This is just a group plan across a number of television stations at Script Zones where they've generated a multi-million-dollar revenue stream off of just a handful of contests that they run across their entire group. So this third thing is you've got to own that relationship with your customers through email. And this is something we heard over and over again. Gordon Burrell gave a keynote, and Gordon is one of the foremost experts on local advertising in North America. And he talked about how engagement in email is the new currency. It's the gold standard for which advertisers are measuring. Advertisers are recognizing they want to build their email database. We've got to be there doing it for them and doing it for ourselves as well. Tim Diavis from Lee Enterprise talked about how promotions was a way they were able to do it, and once they understood the power of the impact of engagement from their promotions, they quadrupled down on growing that database as a whole. It was that kind of light bulb moment for them. And this is Tim Murphy from Entercom Radio. And what he talked about was, and I think this is really a great question, is if you have people in your organization who are getting bonuses, they're incented by how much revenue they bring in, he challenged the group to say, how many of you have a goal for how big your email database is? And that becomes something that somebody in your organization is incented on, whether or not you're making progress towards dominating that goal. We talked a lot about leveraging that consumer profile, and Tim once again talked about how advertisers are not just wanting it, they're expecting it, that they're able to go in and target specific demographic or psychographic categories with their advertising and marketing. We've got to become really audience first, as my business partner Doug Vilhard, who talked about if we have the audience, the revenue will follow. We've got to build that trusted relationship with our audience. They want it with us, but we've got to go and expand it as a whole. We talked about delivering measurable results for our clients. That's what Gordon said in all of their research. That's what advertisers want out of their marketing spend. Sometimes it's branding, but oftentimes it's something very measurable that they're looking for. So our behavior in terms of how we sell has got to change. We can't just go in and push the audience size at our customers. We've got to ask them questions. It's only Sarah Droke is the woman behind the Higdon Furniture and the Audiologist campaign, and she knew what they were looking for. She knew how they'd consider that to be successful because she asked the questions. She did the customer needs analysis. And when you do that, people come back over and over again. You know that you can have success with other advertisers, or David from Steamboat Springs said his advertiser started shifting more and more of their marketing dollars to them at their little newspaper because they could deliver the measurable results they were looking for. If you can deliver, people will come back to you over and over and over again. You can't see this, but it's we're going to talk about how you take these personas and target them at your audience, and we've heard a lot of discussion today about how do we personalize our content because our audience expects it, and how do we target for the sake of our advertisers. And finally, if you're part of a corporate group, one that owns multiple media properties, how do you think about committing your entire organization to this? That it's not something that just one market's doing and doing it on their own, another market may or may not be doing it or doing it a different way, but you have collaboration across all of them as a whole. So I know you couldn't see this, and you probably can't see what's here now too, I realize, but if you go to secondstreetlab.com/SIP Connect, or if you want to just give me your business card, I'd be happy to send you the slides and a lot of other supportive information that's here, as well as a report that we'll be issuing next week on the conference that I was just referencing as a whole. And if we have any time, I'd be happy to field some questions as well. But thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of what we're seeing out there in North America, and I hope it's been useful to you.
¿Alguna pregunta para Matt? Juan.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. One of the examples that I've seen recently about using promotions in a very successful way has been the Chick-fil-A campaign for, promoting the app, basically giving away sandwiches. How much is too much to spend on a campaign to, produce these results? I mean, how do you evaluate
How do you evaluate how much is too much to spend on a promotion?
Yeah.
As a whole? Well, I think what it really comes down to is you have to think about what's the cost per engagement. So how much are you willing to pay per download app? What's the value of that customer to you as a newspaper or as a business that's looking to download its app? Or what's the cost per lead to that hearing aid store? It's a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 hearing aid. They've got good margins on it. So frankly, it's quite a bit that they're willing to pay to get that lead as a whole. A kind of ice cream shop may not be willing to pay nearly as much. So you've got to kind of calculate when you give something big away and you put a big marketing campaign around it as an advertiser or for yourself, you've got to know what's the outcome you're looking to get and how much you're willing to pay. We had real clarity on this. We run deals programs for many of the media companies in North America. And that became very interesting to us because at some point we were able to figure out how much an email address was worth on an annual basis that was in your deals email database. So was it $10? Was it $15? Was it $20? Was it $30 a year? And this was something that Groupon understood as well. And so Groupon was spending incredibly aggressively, and still does, to grow that email database because it cost them about $4 or $5 to buy one, to promote and to get one. And it was worth $20 to $25 just in the first year alone as a whole. So they were willing to do that all day, every day. So it really becomes just a question of the value of a lead and being able to do, over a long-term basis, understanding the cost per lead or outcome, whatever that might be, that's worth it to you or to your advertiser.
So in the case of the examples that you were mentioning, like the audiology, like the cost of the hearing aids and was much less than what they expected to gain from the data?
And this is, I think, increasingly thanks to Google or Facebook, how people are beginning to understand, how they spend money on search advertising or on Facebook advertising. They're only spent, or frankly, Groupon taught this as well. They're only spending money when they get some sort of engagement, and then increasingly they're able to track that back to sales results. So in the case of the hearing aid store, they sold 3 hearing aids, which was quite valuable to them. I think they invested maybe $4,000 in the campaign, and they were thrilled with the results because they immediately sold several of them. And then they had a database of almost 200 people to cultivate over the next 6, 12, 24 months. I haven't followed up, but they've run that campaign 4 years in a row because it works. As opposed to sometimes, unfortunately, when we put an ad in the paper, or we just run a banner campaign, or we run a TV spot, we're left guessing at the effectiveness of it as a whole. And that's really the power of digital, and specifically that's the power of promotions, because people will tell you, and they'll opt into things as a whole. Once you get somebody to fill out a form, it's incredibly powerful in terms of what that can do for you, and in turn for your advertiser.
And the second question tied to that, what have you seen as the UX experience of filling forms? How can that be improved so that you maximize the amount of responses? Have you done any work on
So it comes down to, and we work in Europe and we work in Canada, and it's kind of a human thing, I think, at the end of the day, that people want, if there's something of value to them, that they get in return, and it could be winning a prize, or it could be as simple as sharing their opinion. People fill out surveys all the time. A lot of our readers are informed, and they like to share their opinion on something as well. But if they feel like they're getting a chance to get something back out of that interaction, people are pretty much willing to tell you just about anything as a whole. So in the case of if you have a parent who needs a hearing aid, and they're driving you crazy because you can't hear them as a whole, you'll probably tell them just about anything to be able to get it. Not because you don't want to, but at some point people are in a mode of sharing, and they find it useful. And it's something that they're like, yeah, this reminds me that I really do want to find a way to get my parents to deal with their hearing issue. We actually find in the case of quizzes, when people fill out a quiz, sometimes there's a sweepstakes attached to it, but sometimes it's just optional at the end of it before you get your answer to how well you did or what's the outcome that you get. If you put an optional registration or opt-in for the newsletter for the media company, we've seen that go 70, 80% people opting in. They're just in a mode of sharing, they're enjoying your content, and when you say, would you like to get more of this in your email box, they say yes. It's really amazing. So it doesn't take much. The real biggest key, though, is we see a lot of people will have a form on their website, and they won't ask the question. They won't say, would you like to be added to our email newsletter? When you're at a conference locally, you're at an event, and you ask people to come up to the booth, one of the things you should be asking them is, can I get your email address? Would you like to get our newsletter? We've got to take advantage of every opportunity we can to build this list, because we have the next 5 years, 10 years to do it before somebody else comes into our market and does it instead of us as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, last question.
What kind of media organizations and, television, local television versus newspapers, and also who within those organizations, the circulation department, the advertising sales department, the newsrooms, have you been seeing the most success with?
I think the answer is all over the board, to be honest with you. So this works for radio, it works for television, it works for digital pure play, it works for print. So there's nobody who can't take advantage of this. It's only a question of if you choose to. And then second of all, in terms of who's the leader, who's the champion, sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's somebody from sales, sometimes it's an editorial person. The real key is we've got to get it to be everybody. We've got to get everybody on the same page. Those are the ones that are most successful. So to answer your question, there's no one profile of a media company where this works best. It's really about each of you who decides to be a champion of an audience engagement strategy and a database strategy and a measurable result strategy for your advertisers in your market. It doesn't matter which of them they are. Okay, thank you very much. I'll be around the rest of the afternoon a little bit tomorrow morning if anybody has further questions.
Thank you, Matt.